Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Insight, of course. We bring to you the Insight every Friday. And of course, it is around 30 minutes past 7 p.m. And of course, we bring you the Insight where we always discuss and delve into issues, deliberate issues that affect you. And as we delve into these issues, of course, we tend to bring also other stakeholders who efficiently help us in these discourses. Well, tonight we delve into a discussion to look into Ruto's scorecard generally. Ruto, the president, William Samoei Ruto, has been the president for 100 days now in office. Now, Thursday, President Ruto marked 100 days in office since he took oath as Kenya's president. He came to power, casting himself as a champion for the downtrodden through the bottom-up economic model. He promised a great economic revolution using hashtags like freedom is coming, in the odyssey to make Kenya an economic powerhouse. He made several promises, some of which he said he will achieve in the first 100 days that he will be in power. Some later he said that he needed more time to achieve them. Tonight we look at Ruto's scorecard, the 100 days with Ruto, in which Ruto has been at the helm. And we are asking whether he is up for the task or maybe what exactly is he doing. We ask again that during his time, he based some of his promises, campaign promises, on 5 major issues, which were agriculture, MSMEs, digital superhighways, and affordable housing. Which ones are the president delivering on, and which ones actually can we say that he's finding a rough time going about them? And my guest tonight is Eric Naibe, who is an advocate of the High Court, also joining us here for this conversation. Thank you so much, Mr. Naibe. We welcome you once again for this high discourse conversation. And it is actually 100 days since the president, William Samoei Ruto, came to office. And at the time that he was coming in office, Kenyans were, should I say, what are very bad times, economic-wise. And actually they had great expectations because this president was talking of economic resuscitation of the economy generally. He was talking of improving it. And he came up with economic, with a bottom-up economic model of solving these issues. And people wanted to understand generally if indeed these 100 days that the president has been in office, generally, what do you feel? Do you think that the president is actually on his way to achieve some of these critical issues that actually he said, that even if he has not achieved most of them, but where do we range? Where are we generally?
Thank you very much, Eugene, for this show, inviting me. It is a pleasure to be here. Ruto's 100 days in office, I can say that on a score of 1 to 10, I can give him 6. And the reason I say so is that immediately after his swearing in on 13th of September 2022, he started delivering on what he promised. And one of the promises that he had made was to deal with issues that the judiciary was facing. The main one then was that there were judges who were supposed to be appointed, and they had not been appointed for, I think, 3 years after being vetted and approved. He did that, I think, on the same day of his swearing in. He signed an executive order to actually demonstrate that he was keen on delivering his promises. I think subsequently he also, there are promises he delivered almost immediately. For instance, the promise he made to the judiciary to operationalize the judiciary fund, which is meant to actually give the judiciary some level of independence financially. That one was operationalized. Then he had also made a promise to have the management of finances relating to the National Police Service to be given some kind of independence. What he did was to transfer the financial responsibility from the Ministry of Interior to the Inspector General of Police. I can say that is one of the promises he made and he fulfilled. But of course, the main mantra for this government during election was economic revival. And Kenyans were really waiting for the president to be sworn in so that they can actually get a relief from the heat, the economic heat that we've been into. What the president has done in terms of economic revival, I can say that to a large extent, of course, he has demonstrated effort. For instance, the fertilizer subsidy, which is actually meant to cushion farmers and to make the production phase in terms of food security, to make it easier. I can say that that is one of the efforts. Although that one is not an immediate, it is not something that we will feel immediately, because if fertilizer was subsidized from September onwards, it means that if we are planting maize, we will have to enjoy these benefits maybe after 1 year. The other one is, I think, the launch of this Hustler Fund. I'm not sure whether this fund is actually something that we can term as an economic stimulus or something that is meant to uplift people economically, given that it was now converted and it came out as a loan, where you are supposed to take a loan and pay back. I don't know whether Kenyans were expecting this when the president kept on promising to set aside 50 billion shillings for hustlers, for people at the bottom. Some Kenyans, I think, thought this fund was going to be given as a grant, but now it is coming up as a loan, which you are supposed to pay within 14 days. There are those who think that it works for small-scale traders who would want maybe a boost of 1,000 shillings to add stock and to exchange and to make some profit within a few days.
Yes. You've actually mentioned so many issues on the 100 days of William Samoei Ruto in office. And actually one of them that you have mentioned is that immediately he got in office, then he swore in judges which had not been sworn. The critics of William Samoei Ruto's government pick some issues between the bromance of the judiciary and the executive. And they even think that the president himself has used the friendship, can I say, or the bromance actually, to maybe remove some of his diehards, maybe from the hot soup, because actually before that we realized that some of his those people who had actually been campaigning for him were allegedly to be in certain crimes, but I've got some issues actually with the system, with the judiciary. I don't know what you think about it.
I don't think it is wrong for the president to associate himself closely with the judiciary in the manner that he has done. And even if you look at the relationship between President Uhuru and the judiciary during his tenure, it was not good, and I don't think that is something that we would have wanted to continue.
Do you think the president has taken advantage of that?
About the cases that were in court, if you look at the cases on a case-by-case basis, you realize that it is the DPP who has been withdrawing the cases. It is not the judiciary that has essentially dismissed those cases. Most of the cases have been withdrawn by the DPP, who falls under the executive arm of government. So you can't really say that the judiciary is playing into this bromance, or whether that the president is actually taking advantage of this. What I will say that the test between the test that would come out whether this relationship between the president and the judiciary is actually something that is not desirable is with regards to the CDF issue, because the Supreme Court has pronounced itself. The president has written to the parliament to request that parliament amends the constitution, and he has insisted that CDF should be revived. So I think by the time we go full circle, we will now get to establish whether the president has managed to actually take
the judiciary in his pockets.
Yes.
Actually, okay, it's quite interesting in this conversation, but the major issue about the 100 days in Ruto's office is that Ruto came as an economic revolution. That is actually what he was known for. And I want us to base still our questions and conversation based on the economy generally. And I know you're a Kenyan. You were there when Uhuru was in power, and now that Ruto has taken office, actually, he had promised that immediately he takes he puts down the Bible, then there are a series of things that actually will change. And of course, he's mentioned about the cost of living, which was very critical at that time that he was taking charge. Do you believe that we are somewhere? Because Kenyans are crying. Do you think that as they look forward, they see hope?
I remain optimistic that we are on the right path, because myself, if I can compare the conditions we were in August backwards, for instance, in May, June, July, compared to what we are facing right now, we are in a better position. Most of it, of course, is contributed by the fact that we were in a long season of drought where there was food crisis in the country and rains came back. So, but again, you can't really write down and ignore what the government has done. For instance, the issue of fertilizer. The issue of subsidizing fertilizer is something that is so dear to people who do farming to agricultural regions, like the way what we do in Trans Nzoia. I can say that most farmers are relieved because of their access to fertilizer. And if you look at, if you just look at what we are doing now, there was a time fuel skyrocketed, fuel prices, and even the prices of unga went beyond 200 shillings. Right now, I think it came down slightly. So I can say that on a scale of 1 to 10 again, or even in terms of percentage, there is a 10% improvement in terms of what we are feeling economically as Kenyans. And I think there is still hope. What I fear is if the president is not being accommodative and accommodating dissenting views and taking criticism positively, then we might end up again falling. But what we are doing, the way we are doing at the moment, what the opposition is doing and what the government is doing is actually to the right direction. The opposition led by Raila Odinga is actually raising critical issues frequently, and they are doing it in the right way. We've not seen demonstrations, violent demonstrations, but we've seen them speak, and they have spoken with impact. And on the other hand, I have seen the president answering them directly and even indirectly. What I would wish is that if the president could actually take what is being told positively, then it is meant to cement his legacy, it is meant to make his work easier.
Still on the 100 days in Ruto's office, generally, I want us to look into a very critical issue, which in a very great way affects the Kenyans' lives, and that is the Vision 2030, Kenyans' Vision 2030. We believe that, and know that Kenyans' Vision 2030 is a development blueprint, actually, established in 2008 that was to be achieved by 2030, and it was to ensure sustainable it had sustainable development goals, which was to see Kenyans living a better life by that specific time. It therefore means that any government that comes between 2008 to 2030 had to align its blueprint, had to align its actually it's blueprint to the larger Vision 2030, which was considered to be where Kenyans, not just Kenya, but even the Commonwealth countries were headed to by Vision 2030. You look at the 100 days of Ruto in office. Do you think that he and his government have aligned themselves to the Vision 2030?
I think they have done so. The only thing is that we've not seen the Ruto's government mention and even bring out Vision 2030 in their speeches and even in the way they communicate their policy. But if you look at what the Kenya Kwanza promised in their manifesto and what they are still trying to focus on, affordable housing, healthcare, issues of ICT and mainstreaming ICT, and of course economy. The economic pillar is one of the major blueprints of this government. If you look at these pillars, they are actually the same pillars which Vision 2030 was anchored upon. What the government, maybe what those who communicate government policy are not doing, they are not telling us that this is in line with this policy and Vision 2030. But I think he's actually aligned. What I fear is that maybe 2030 is coming too closer, and that is why the government is not keen on now telling us that by 2030 we want to do this, because it is actually, if Ruto is to serve 2 terms, it means 2030 will fall into his last term. And if he now makes himself the face of Vision 2030 and makes Vision 2030 one of the things that Kenyans look forward to realize under his regime, then he's likely to be judged by 2030. So I think he might be aligned, he's aligned in terms of policy framework, but again, the fear is that 2030 is here. It might find him in office as a president, and he might be judged again for failing to take the country to that vision successfully. 2030
is not far, as you say.
Yes.
And actually, the vision of 2030 was to transform Kenya into a newly industrializing middle-income country, providing high quality of life to all its citizens, with a clean and secure environment. Do you think we are on the journey to achieve this? Because why am I even asking this? We had the former president, the former regime had certain agendas that set, called the Big Four agendas. These 4 agendas were part of the larger plan to ensure that we achieve the Vision 2030. Do you think, because actually the president, Uhuru Kenyatta, did not achieve the Big Four agendas that actually were part of the larger Vision 2030, here William Samoei Ruto is speaking of something different because he wants to do things in a different way. Do you think we're making progress? Are we headed there, the Vision 2030? Are we going to achieve it if he left the projects of the former regime and has started new projects?
I think we might still head there if, because what Kibaki did was to lay a basis for it. Of course, he initiated major infrastructural developments. And if you look at again what Uhuru's legacy speaks about, is about again a lot of focus on infrastructural development, which is actually a basis. So that where Ruto is at the moment, he might not focus so much on roads again. He might now be forced to focus on other sectors, for instance, health, which has not done well, which I think Uhuru didn't do well. Even Kibaki, I don't think if he did well. If he focuses on health and now these issues of economy, making the lives of Kenyans easy, we might still realize that vision even without Ruto aspiring and even making it one of his main focus. But I fear again that Vision 2030 was an ambitious blueprint that actually when we set it up in 2007, 2008, it looked like we had around 20 around 20 to 22 years to achieve it. If you look at, for instance, the issue of affordable housing, we are now seeing the president launching a few constructions here and there. And if you ask yourself whether these projects are going to impact a large percentage of Kenyans, you see, it is difficult to see how these ones are going to impact Kenyans as a population of 50 million people. So I think it was a very ambitious vision that we might be forced to push it to maybe 2063, because I think there is an African agenda for 2063 again that African countries are trying to align themselves to. But 2030, in my opinion, is too close. It is too near. We might get there maybe up to 30%. But for us to fully realize what we aspired, then we might still need more time and maybe a major focus by this government on delivering.
And Mr. Naibe, thank you so much for that. But even as we talk about Vision 2030 and the sustainable development goals, actually, the agendas that the government has for Kenyans generally are to ensure that we have a better life. And the former regime, that is President Uhuru Kenyatta, even went ahead and borrowed quite a number of loans just to sustain these agendas, some of these agendas, and during that time, the then deputy president, actually who is now the current president, in that regime, he criticized the government for borrowing quite a lot, because he thought that actually it was unsustainable for Kenyans. And in his regime, in his 100 days, Mr. Ruto has continuously borrowed. And the number of figures, yesterday actually he borrowed around 55.1 billion, which is to be released immediately to the exchequer actually to help him to support the budget. Is actually the first budget, right? So my question generally is, if he criticized borrowing the loans in the other regimes, in the previous regime, in which he was part of as the deputy president, what makes it different in this one? Because he has continuously borrowed to fund his budget.
I think, first of all, Ruto's criticism on Uhuru Kenyatta borrowing, I think he started doing it after the fallout. Not even immediately after the handshake, but I think from 2021 onwards, when the campaign mode was kicking in. Before that, Ruto was part and parcel of what the government was doing, borrowing, and he even went on record defending and explaining why we needed those loans. The reality is that as a country, we need these loans to supplement our budget. And what we fear is the conditions which this, for instance, IMF places on these loans that are somehow oppressive on our economy, because there are structural adjustments which IMF forces countries to take for them to take loans. For instance, in Kenya, we've been forced to remove fuel subsidies. There is a report that for the loan that we are about to take, the one you are talking about from IMF, of course, one of the conditions was that we remove subsidies such as fuel subsidies, and the government reduces spending, things that we could still do as a country even without looking for those loans. So the impact of, for instance, removing fuel subsidy, of course, we are going to feel it most probably from January 15th onwards. Fuel prices are likely to shoot. And this is going to have an effect on other the prices of other goods. So that what IMF sometimes projects and maybe even predicts, they predict a smooth moment upon taking the loans and upon meeting those conditions. But sometimes they fail to appreciate the impact, the immediate impact which Kenyans have to deal with when those loans are taken and when those conditions are met, as they are forced, when the government is forced to meet those conditions. So I think Ruto criticizing the Uhuru regime towards the tail end, I think it was just a political positioning for him to have a better bargaining in the face of tough economic times where Kenyans wanted somebody.
Is it political positioning or political conmanship? Or what is actually the real term there?
I don't want to call it conmanship.
Yes.
But I think it was a way to persuade Kenyans to vote for him, given that Raila had aligned
and actually,
himself to
what you're now saying begs quite a lot of questions, which I'd love to ask, but we are going for a short break. One of the questions that actually I'd love you to maybe delve deeply into is that William Samoei Ruto came to save the economy. He came when the economy was so bad. Fuels and every other thing, the basic needs actually were continuously increasing. The IMF gave us loans. By January, we expect increase in basic commodities, some of the basic commodities. It means that life continues to go high.
To get tougher.
Yeah, to get tougher. What does it mean? Even for that person who voted for William Samoei Ruto, these 100 days, does it make them think that maybe they were shortchanged? Is now this what we call the political conmanship? Or what actually is happening? Maybe you can elucidate that more so that maybe the one that is listening can really understand what is really happening, because what was said during campaigns is actually quite different from now what is happening after they have gotten the power. Well, this is the Insight. 21144 is our SMS line. We continue to delve into this critical discourse about Ruto's 100 days in office, taking stock of his scorecard generally. What is happening? What do we expect going forward? What does this 100 days mean to the other 5 years remaining? Well, please continue staying with this live broadcast. Thank you.
Nakukaribisha tena katika makao makuu yako katika ulimwengu wa michezo.
Yoga is not a sport. Yoga is actually a way of life. Ukiona FIFA inaingilia kati, it means that the FIFA rules have been violated.
Ukiona kingia kwa akademi yako, unamwambia masomo na talent lazima ziende. The moment nisikia masomo yaendewe chini, hata time out kwa football account.
Wanawake ni wengi actually mpaka saa hizi tumekaa ni kama tumekuwa wanawake wamekuwa wengi kuliko wanaume. Kuna wale ambao ni artistic. Yes, wanapenda mambo ya kuigiza.
I am coded to look for solutions.
You limit yourself, not the sport doesn't limit you.
We say a dedicated women only show that focuses only on women.
Information is power, so is knowledge. It is a dynamic world that we live in, and we seek a source that will inform us in every change in innovation and all current happenings.
We are here to sound a warning.
Here at GBS TV, we deliver exactly that. Chronologically, with an additive of entertainment and ear-catching conversations that will change your perspective of tomorrow.
As opposition leader Bobby Wine, he actually tweeted,
War is a very expensive business.
We are a team of professionals, from well-esteemed camera experts to directors, field reporters and anchors.
A society without a watchdog.
We will be updating you on matters economy.
I am Sete Emmanuel, and this is GBS.
5 minutes remaining.
GBS TV, now brings you News at 9, 2022.
Everywhere GBS.
Thank you so much and welcome back to this live broadcast. 100 days in office for William Samoei Ruto. It is the UDA's government. And there's a question that actually I posed to you earlier before we went for a break. Reality now has dawned on even the people that voted for William Samoei Ruto, who saw him as a savior who came to save the economy of Kenya. What is different from now? What is actually happening, the reality, and what the people expected?
I agree that Ruto's government was actually it came into being because of the promises they made, especially touching on the economy. And of course, the bottom-up economic model is the one that that actually took root, and Kenyans, majority Kenyans, came to believe in it. I don't want to say that what the president is doing currently is outside, completely outside what he promised, but I think he is facing what we can say is what is the reality. Because what politicians promise during campaigns is always different from what should be happening when the rubber meets the road. But what I would single out as one of maybe Ruto's pet project is this issue of Hustler Fund, which he has operationalized. This is the fund that I think most Kenyans will still want to see how it goes, and he might end up being judged largely on the basis of the performance of this Hustler Fund. When it was launched, the president said that, of course, the first phase of it was the one that targets, I'm not sure of the terms, but the ones that targets individuals. And then I think people are advised to be in groups where they can now borrow up to 50,000, 50,000, even up to 250,000 shillings. I think that one is yet to be rolled out. But again, concerns have been raised about whether this fund is actually anchored on a law, and whether there are structures and even management frameworks for this fund. Because Kenyans have been asking if I'm to borrow, for instance, 500 shillings, and there is a percentage that is to be saved, that is to go to my savings. How is the government saving this amount? Is it being taken to my NSSF account? Is it being kept in some, we are not sure where these savings are being kept. In short, the fund has been operationalized, I think, with the intention of making Kenyans see the president's commitment to the promise he made. But the practicality and sustainability of the fund is still a subject of doubt. I don't know what will happen from January next year when fuel prices shoot up again, because this has been a challenge during Uhuru's regime. It has been a challenge. Now Ruto has taken a loan from IMF with the consequence that we are going to have fuel prices go high, and even food commodities and basic products go high. I think Kenyans are going to again, of course, to cry, to complain, and to a large extent it is the reality. But again, to a large extent, I think the government is still slow on doing what it promised Kenyans, because the government promised to lift this yoke and to make life easier.
Mr. Naibe, we started this conversation and you said that you are seeing hope. But as in the course of this conversation, actually, those who are critically listening to us do not find hope, because as we continue to delve deeply into this conversation, then we get to understand that the cost of living will continue rising, because we believe that even the 51.4 billion that was loaned to Kenya, it is not the last one. There will be more and more loans that will come, but also will also come with conditions. And also you've talked about the Hustler Fund. And there's still so many questions around the Hustler Fund. This Hustler Fund, there was certain, in the Parliament, the National Assembly actually, and sat down and made some issues around this Hustler Fund, which actually were to see the operationalizing of this Hustler Fund. One of them was to have a board which has not yet been formed. And people are asking a lot of questions, including where is this Hustler Fund coming from? And so many other questions around the Hustler Fund that actually the hoi polloi do not still understand. And these are so many questions that even you don't and can't answer yet. But again, I want us to look into another issue that actually is affecting the Hustler government. When the Hustler government was actually campaigning during the campaign time, one of their campaign promises that 50% of the cabinet was to be given to women in the cabinet slots. Some other issues actually that they were talking about was inclusivity, but generally we have seen, and even Odinga had his time criticizing the government and saying that this government has failed to have an inclusive, all-inclusive government, because majorly the cabinet slots has been comprised of two major tribes, and that is the Kikuyu and the Kalenjin. We also have a gender balance, which has not also been met according to the campaign. And you as an advocate who I believe, and in this conversation, several conversations that we've had, you come from a minority group. What do you think of this generally? How does it affect you? Or how do the people that you represent generally feel when they see this?
About gender balance, I think the cabinet, it is true the cabinet is not balanced in terms of gender. And this was one of the lowest points of this regime when it started, because the president was very categorical when he launched his manifesto that he was going to ensure gender balance and even regional, tribal balance in appointments. But as we saw, there was, I think there was just a deliberate move to not to balance the gender in the cabinet. But I can't say that the failure to balance.
Why do you think it was deliberate?
Because I think the main reason that the president had to select this cabinet was that he had to narrow down to those individuals whom he believed, and of course it has to be aligned to his agenda for his manifesto, and then his political agenda, so that it may be true that the reason he arrived at these individuals is because those who are the best in terms of what he foresees, the people he needs.
When the president was making these promises,
yes,
he actually knew at the back of his mind that there were sufficient women around him,
yes,
who could take up positions of CSS,
yes,
of PSS, and who could align with the agenda of the Hustler movement. What changed?
That is why I'm saying this was deliberate. You can't say that there was an oversight, that maybe somebody gave names, then eventually different names were announced. This was deliberate.
Okay.
And I think only the president can answer that, because these are individuals he trusts. These are individuals he believes can drive him for the next 5 years, and maybe there is a vision for 2027 onwards. So we can say that what we can do as commentators is to just critique and say that this one failed to meet the gender test. But as to what motivated him to omit, to fail to add at least even 2 women to the cabinet, we leave it to him. The problem is even the Kenyans whom we expect to participate in ensuring gender balance in different sectors of government have also been failing. Look at what Parliament did the other day when this committee was selected, the committee that is meant to look at the impeachment of Governor Mwangaza. There were complaints again that there were 3 women out of a total number of 11 committee members. This is Parliament again, failing to just include one extra one to make it 1/3, 2/3. So I think it is a problem that cuts across. We can't say that only the president has failed on it, because even as Kenyans, when we elect leaders, we still elect based on issues of gender. We look at the members of Parliament elected, the senators who are elected. It is still a cultural problem. It is still a society problem. But we didn't expect it from the president, who had the power to appoint and to balance. About tribal balance, I didn't see a major problem in terms of tribe. Only that, of course, the main concern is that we have more than 44 tribes in Kenya. And if you have a chance of putting up a cabinet comprising of 21 cabinet members, why not give each tribe one each? Why have one tribe having 4 or even 5 or 2 tribes having 4 each when we have 44 tribes in Kenya? We have minority communities which have never been represented in cabinet, and they may never be represented because of these issues.
So actually this issue about the minority being included, and of course also the issue of gender balance, is something that we still have a long way to go.
We still have a long way to go.
We still have a long way to go.
That, the government is in place. We have a full cabinet. We have PSS. We have all appointments. Basically, all appointments have been made so far.
You talked about what maybe the president can do about it. Now, the president in these 100 days has come up with proposals to the parliament, actually. And these are proposals that should see a constitutional implementation. And when maybe the constitution will be implemented, some of the issues actually that he has touched on is maybe to see the 2/3 gender rule being dispensed. I don't know how, but maybe you can explain that to us, maybe in just 30 seconds.
A promise from the president?
Yes, in the proposals that actually has made to the parliament.
Constitutional changes?
Yes, constitutional changes.
I don't believe...
To envisage the 2/3 gender rule.
I don't believe in such proposals coming from the president if by his authority he cannot implement them while appointing cabinet. The challenge we've had in parliament is a major challenge that I don't think, again, a proposal from the president would actually cure it. It is still a problem with majority of our leaders.
Yes. This is a cultural issue that we are alive to.
That we are still confronting.
And on the same note, in his 100 days in office, actually, we have seen, when we talk about constitutional proposals that are seeking to amend the constitution, we have seen the president making it to parliament to create the office of the official opposition leader. And actually, the office of the opposition leader has elicited a lot of questions over the potential disruptions that it could have on the presidency generally. And my question to you tonight is, how is this going to affect the governance structure? How is this also going to affect the parliament and its functions generally?
First, I think a proposal coming from the president to have constitutional changes to that magnitude, because he has actually made 2 major proposals. One is to create the office of opposition leader. The other one is for parliament to amend the constitution and constitutionalize CDF. this office of opposition is not something that our constitution contemplated, because under the 2010 constitution, we actually implemented a presidential system of government where the president actually aligns to the majority in parliament, and there is a minority, and there are leadership structures. So that if we are to introduce a leader of opposition who sits in parliament, I foresee a situation where we are now interfering with the checks and balances that were actually put in place under the constitution. Because what we have at the moment is 3 arms of government which are supposed to check each other, and we have a parliament that has 2 sides, majority and minority. The minority is basically the opposition in parliament. If you take a leader of opposition to parliament under this framework, then it means we are interfering even with the leadership structures in parliament. I don't know what becomes of the leader of minority in parliament, and whether this leader of opposition will be the one to give instructions to the leader of minority on the proposals to be made, or whether he will be given powers to actually make those proposals on behalf of the opposition. So I think it is unnecessary, especially for it to come from the president, who is supposed to be checked by this leader of opposition. And it is a suspect move, which I think I've seen commentators and opinion leaders say this is just a political move to contain the opposition, especially led by Raila Odinga, because there is a belief that once he is confined to parliament, where he is expected to be making statements and to be communicating officially, then he is not likely to go to the streets, he is not likely to interfere, to make those moves that he has previously made that tend to shake the government of the day. Because in parliament, he will give a statement, he will speak, members of parliament will react, then it will end there. As opposed to him being outside parliament and calling for Kamukunjis, for instance, calling for rallies in Kamukunji, Uhuru Park, or even Kasarani, and making major statements and somehow creating some euphoria towards 2027. So I think I tend to agree with those who say that this move coming from the president is not well intentioned, because how do you make a proposal to cushion and to even save your opponent and to give him a fund, to give him some powers?
And actually, Masu will say that if you see your opponent maybe planning for you, then you should actually really watch out.
Sure.
But again, still on the same issue about the constitutional proposals that actually the president is proposing to amend the constitution to parliament, I want to quote what the president of the Court of Appeal said verbatim on BBI, on one of the reasons that actually led to the fall of BBI, and say, under our constitutional architecture, the president cannot initiate the process of amendment of the constitution as a popular initiative. Now, these are the words of the president of Court Appeal on the issue of BBI. Now, BBI is no longer there, but we now have another president, a different president from the other president who was supporting BBI. People believe that some of the propositions in BBI are the same ones that are being proposed by the current president, who then was against BBI. Actually, someone will ask, actually, what is different? Because this is happening, actually, when we talk about constitutional change, we are still talking about the 100 days that the president has been in office. And there are so many questions that actually people are asking, because if one could say that maybe the timing was bad, and then the timing is not good right now, because we still need economic resuscitation. It was actually the first 100 days was to work on the economy. He's now talking about the constitutional reforms and so many other issues. So when we talk about the constitution, and we know very well that the president cannot initiate a popular initiative, what is there an ulterior motive? Will someone think that maybe there's an ulterior motive behind what the president is actually doing?
I agree that the proposals coming from the president at such a time would still suffer the same fate as those of Uhuru Kenyatta during the BBI clamor. Because the same reasons that BBI was declared unconstitutional are the same reasons that this Ruto's regime is likely to face in case these proposals are taken to the next level. But I can't say that these proposals are really similar to those of BBI, because if you look at what the president is proposing, there are only two issues, two major issues, the issue of CDF and the issue of leader of opposition, which look like these are just political, because CDF again is meant to make members of parliament happy, because that is what members of the National Assembly are actually pushing at the moment, and for them to feel part of this Ruto's administration and to remain a solid unit up to 2027, Ruto has to look like he's pushing for them a fund that is meant to make their work easier. Then the leader for the position of leader of opposition, so of course again there is another angle to that that we've talked about. So I don't think that these are similar to those of BBI, but they will still suffer the same fate, because a president should not actually be seen to be fronting constitutional changes when there are so many things on his desk to deliver.
Actually, even as we come to the end of this conversation, if the president himself is aware of this very fact, is alive to these issues that actually led to maybe the fall of BBI, why will the president himself continue fronting a popular initiative? Is there an ulterior motive of ensuring, because actually we have always believed that in Raila's book of political survival is to come up with constitutional reforms. So by the president himself, who is an opponent of Raila Odinga, coming up with the constitutional reform, does it mean that when the court maybe falls it, then that will be the end of Raila? That is just maybe, I'm just acting as the devil's advocate maybe. I don't know, but you can talk on that maybe as we come to the end of this show, as you also give us your final remarks.
I would look at it this way, because initially, before the president joined this issue of leader of opposition being institutionalized, there were talks from members of parliament aligned to Raila Odinga, talking about the same thing. But now that it is the president fronting it, then it looks like the president is actually making a calculated move to preempt what Raila would have wanted to do. And you see now Raila Odinga cannot now come out to propose constitutional changes to cement CDF in the law. He cannot come out to say that I want a position as a leader of opposition leader. And the next, of course, issues that are going to arise again are relating to the IBC, restructuring of IBC. You will likely see the president soon, after this tribunal completes the process, he will likely steal the show by initiating the process of constituting restructuring IBC before Raila does it. So I would say that it might be a way to counter what Raila would be doing at the moment, and maybe to make Raila Odinga maybe think again outside the box and come up with other issues. Which
we have come to the end of this show, Mr. Naibei, and I just want to, because we were talking about 100 days of Ruto in office, taking stock of his scorecard generally, of what he has done. To Kenyans watching tonight, what should they expect? Because actually, the truth is, life is not what they expected. It is not it is not actually what it was as Ruto came to power. A very vigorous man. I will deal with cartels. I will do this. Immediately I put the Bible down. This is going to happen. And some of these things have not yet happened. Some of which he had said that he was going to do in 100 days. He has said, give me 1 year. What should Kenyans expect going forward? generally?
Generally, I think Kenyans should remain hopeful, given that 100 days is not practically possible. It is not possible for one to realize all these promises within 100 days. But Kenyans should also remain vigilant, and of course, we should remain bold enough to speak when we are supposed to speak. But the most important thing is for us to play our roles as Kenyans.
Okay.
If you are a farmer, do your work. If you are a professional career person, do your job. And of course, pray for the country, pray for the president. As much as he has his weaknesses, he is our leader, and we have a collective responsibility as Kenyans to pray for the government of the day and to give them the support they need. Whenever there is need to speak out against ills of the government, to speak out against moves that are not pro-people, let's speak out. Otherwise, I think, as I said before, for these 100 days, this government has done at least 6 over 10, and there is still hope that if they are given this 1 year, and if they listen to these dissenting voices and those who are genuinely giving criticism, we are still likely to succeed as a nation. Otherwise, I wish those who are watching a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you so much, Mr. Eric Naibei. Mr. Eric Naibei is an advocate of the High Court, joining us here. Of course, a resident analyst here, where we get to discuss and talk about issues that actually are affecting you. Today, we are looking at the 100 days in office of the president. And Mr. Eric Naibei says that we should continue praying for the government and continue praying for the president himself. It is a collective responsibility to do so. Well, it is now your responsibility to continue praying and continue working hard as a citizen of Kenya. Well, as Naibei says, I would like to also wish you a very Merry Christmas this festive season, and Happy New Year, even as you continue to discuss issues of politics. Every Friday, you get to listen to us right on Insight at GBS TV. And on behalf of everyone who has made this a success, I would like to wish you a very good night. Till next Friday. Thank you.